Sonic Movieverse Book 2, Gotta Go Fast, Chapter 2, The Fox. Sonic Hoop, launching himself through the forest with a spin dash, a move he'd been practicing for a little while now after realizing how effective it had first been against Robotnik's machines. He never knew if or when he would need to battle the madman again, and so he trained the best he could while also offering to train Tails, who had no fighting experience either. The sheriff, who caught on to their plans, offered to help, running simulations and teaching them about human fighting techniques. The hedgehog zoomed side to side, dodging trees left and right, sharpening his reflexes. While he already knew the forest like the back of his hand, he liked to challenge himself by going faster than he'd ever dared to go without hitting anything. So far, he was partly successful. A few rogue branches had bested him before, but he knew better now. A sudden feeling of dread overcame him and he halted, eyes wide.
Oh no?
He murmured, dashing toward his house, brows furrowed in worry. His worry increased when he couldn't immediately detect any light coming from the residence, and the second he crossed the edge of the forest, he gasped. The front door was wide open, its doorknob long forgotten in the debris lining up the hallway. The destruction led to the living room with a gaping hole in the wall and the out-of-commission television. Sonic tensed when he noticed a few blood droplets adorning the ruined sofa and the floor around it.
Tails!
He called out, hoping to all the gods, both Mobian and human, that nothing had happened to his little brother. Yet, the silence heavily hung in the air, and the lack of answer only amplified his fear.
Tails, where are you?
His ears picked up a faint sound just then, akin to a mechanical whir coming from outside the house. He caught a red light in his peripheral view before he yelped, dodging a laser shot at him. He gasped as the laser hit its mark through the window and onto the living room table, shattering the glass and piece of furniture. He pintered, Vince.
No.
He muttered, scrambling to go back outside and face the threat to his house. He found himself face to face with some familiar pieces of machinery.
Eggman?
He growled, taking on a battle stance.
Show yourself.
A laser was all he got in reply, and he dodged, using his spin dash move against the offending robot. It shattered into pieces as more robots took its place, all hovering in from their hiding spots. He took a closer look at a few of them, noting that they were oddly shaped like wasps. Sonic narrowed his eyes.
If it's a fight you want, it's a fight you'll get.
He dodged more lasers, shooting through one robot with a spin dash. He used his momentum to jump on top of the others, making quick work of them. He landed on the charred grass, robot debris surrounding him. He huffed, kicking a piece further away.
I'm down, Robotnik. Now tell me where Tails is.
Yet silence answered him. It seemed as though the madman was long gone and the stray robots were meant to be an ambush. He growled, lightning flashing through his quills. He was livid, the crazy human from his past, the one who still terrorized his dreams. That man was back, and he had taken one of the most important individuals in Sonic's life. He had involved the one child who never should have been involved. He had to pay. It only dawned on Sonic that the lightning surrounding his body had increased in volume and intensity, which was quickly adding on to the damage already strewn across the property. The hedgehog took a deep breath, following Maddie's technique, until his will settled and he was finally calm. And with calm came realization. Tails was gone. Once again, he was on his own. For how long he lay on the burnt grass wallowing in anguish and self-pity, Sonic did not know. It wasn't until he heard a faint whimper coming from the house that he perked up, eyes wide.
Tails?
His hope dissipated, but the relief that bled through his body was welcome. The familiar golden retriever came running out of the debris and into Sonic's welcoming arms.
Oh, I'm glad you're all right, Betty.
The blue blur murmured, gently rubbing Ozzy's fur. The dog whined, licking Sonic's cheeks. Sonic chuckled, allowing the pet's treatment as he recognized it to be a tactic used to help cheer him up.
I'm safe too.
The hedgehog sobered up almost instantly, despite the dog's best attempts to prevent that.
But Tails isn't.
Sonic thought, furrowing his brows. For a second, he considered calling Tom. After all, the sheriff should know what went down in his house, who was back, and what happened to the young fox. And yet, Sonic paused. The man was surely enjoying spending time away from him and Tails with Maddie in Hawaii. He could ruin their vacation, and besides, the last thing he wanted was to involve more people into his mess. The human couple was safe where they were, and they would remain that way. He had to do this alone. Sonic pocketed his phone, ignoring the feeling of dread and uncertainty crawling on his skin. He then looked Ozzy in the eye, slowly getting up from his spot on the ground.
I gotta get you to safety. But where?
The dog barked in response, tail wagging. Sonic smirked.
I go where you think. To Wade's Eddies.
Upon awakening, the first thing he could feel was the soreness spreading through his body. The hard surface he lay on didn't help his tender back, and he found it hard to take a deep breath without feeling a twinge in his chest. He furrowed his brows in discomfort, bringing a trembling hand over to his throat and massaging the offending member with a hoarse groan. His ears picked up on a cackle, muffled still by the haze of drowsiness. A low one escaped his lips despite himself, further hurting his throat. He wrapped his namesakes around his bruised body, the tips of his tails brushing against something metallic. He froze, breath hitching in his throat. He slowly opened his eyes, rubbing the unrelenting blurriness away from his vision. A cage. He was caged. His breath picked up just as he caught sight of two pairs of human legs making their way over to him.
The little urchin is awake. Wonderful.
The young fox hid himself from view, using his tails as cover. He pressed his ears against his head as he tried to block out the mad doctor's maniacal laughter at his expense. The bars of his cage rattled from the abuse of a harsh kick, sending the kid into hyperventilation. This was the treatment from the bullies of his past all over again. Tails droned in his panic, wishing for his brother to come save him. Lost in thought, he never heard the two humans leave the room he was in, nor did he hear the Echida's footsteps lead him to the cage. He attempted to apply Maddie's breathing techniques to will his fragile state, noting with relief that it seemed to work. When the fox finally stilled, soothed by his own deep breaths, he processed the silence that greeted him. Surprised, he peeked through his tails, recognizing the red Mobian who had hurt him. The creature stared right at him, arms crossed over his chest, covering what looked to be a white crescent mark blending through his red coat. Tails froze, making eye contact with the Echida. He couldn't find it in himself to look away. Many emotions flashed through the kid's face. Embarrassment at being watched while he was freaking out, fear at seeing his attacker in such close proximity, and curiosity. He couldn't help it. He was curious by nature, and perhaps the Mobian could answer a few questions for him. The fox squeaked out, wincing at the pain in his throat. Knuckles grunted in return, still not breaking eye contact nor his science. Tails blinked. Ning, let the...
I'd say it's nice to meet you, but, it isn't.
Still, the red Mobian did not budge, a permanent frown on his face. The kid pursed his lips, nodding to himself.
Cool.
He muttered, averting his gaze to the floor of his cage.
Fine, I'll lick it.
The Echida growled, glaring.
What do you mean?
Clearly, there's something you would like to know, and clearly, you believe that I long hold the answers to your inquiries. Ask your questions before I am no longer in the mood to entertain you.
Oh, right, yeah.
The fox gulped.
Well, why are you working for Robotnik?
He hesitantly uttered, fear fighting its way to the forefront of his mind when the older Mobian didn't immediately answer. A beat, then.
I am looking with him, not for him.
Oh, sorry.
Knuckles huffed.
As for why, he offered a partnership I could not refuse. With his resources, I can finally locate the legendary Master Emerald. In return, I can help him exercise revenge on the Blue Blood.
Alone.
Robotnik's the one who hurt Sonic, not the other way around.
Tails explained with a shaky voice, concerned for his brother's safety above his own.
Bad. I'm willing to bet the doctor's trying to get the emerald for himself.
A deal is a deal.
The Echidna growled, clenching his fists.
It would be additional for the man to go back on his word.
The kid nodded.
Yeah, but some people don't really, the way you way. You know, Robotnik, from what Sonic told me, he's not an honorable man, not even close.
At that, Knuckles frowned, averting his gaze to the ground.
As you stated, you do not know him. It is unwise to form an opinion on a topic you know nothing about.
Well, that is true. Sonic knows him too, and I trust his judgment. In fact, I'm willing to bet the doctor's taking advantage of you.
Enough!
The older Mobian harshly interrupted, taking a step closer to the cage.
I will not tolerate slander.
Tails' breath hitched in his throat at the physical display of a threat, and he vigorously nodded, squeezing his tails tighter around his body.
Duly noted.
He squeaked, pulling his knees closer to his chest in a comforting hug. The sheer vulnerability emanating from the fox made Knuckles pause again.
You are just a child.
He observed rather numbly, cocking his head to the side.
Why did the hedgehog choose to involve you?
It was the kid's turn to frown.
He didn't. He wanted to keep me out of it. Actually, you involved me by beating me up and kidnapping me, so thanks, but no thanks for that.
The Echidna blinked, running a sheepish hand through his locks.
Right. I suppose it should be my turn to apologize to you. I did what I believed was in the doctor's best interests, but I must admit, I do not feel comfortable with this situation.
Join a club.
Tails muttered, leaning his chin upon his knees while gesturing to the cage he was in.
Knuckles.
A new voice spoke, startling the Jew. Robotnik walked in with a grin, followed by a man who appeared to be his assistant.
You weren't spoiling all our plans to the little tiger, were you?
At this, Knuckles bristled, stepping away from the cage.
You dare accuse me of betrayal?
At this, the doctor's smirk grew.
No, of course not, my angry friend. But foxes can be quite cunning. I would hate for this one to trick you.
The Echidna huffed.
I am more than prepared to keep the fox in check. His tricks will not succeed with me.
That is quite good to know. Now follow me, if you will. There are further details in need of discussion.
And away from prying ears.
The second man added, sending the caged fox a pointed glare. Knuckles glanced at the kid, who had reverted to his most vulnerable state, hiding behind his two fluffy appendages. He nodded, following the doctor's assistant out of the room without another word. As the doctor himself left, he kept a steely gaze on the quivering fox.
I have big plans for you, Furball.
The sounds of a slamming door and familiar maniacal laughter reached Tails' folded ears, and the fur of his muzzle slowly dampened with a stream of fresh tears.